Welcome to Agency Allies, the show where we sit down with the leaders shaping the future of branding, design, and advertising. No fluff, just what it's really like working in today's top agencies. Today on the pod, we have Chris Perkins, president of Model B, where he leads an independent marketing consultancy, helping brands grow through proven strategies and AI-powered tools. It's a really cool website. And he's also the collaboration lead of the Partner Collective, which I'm really excited to get down talking about, which connects over 60 marketing services companies worldwide, somewhat of a, I like to call it maybe a justice league of sorts, and brings decades of leadership from top agencies and global brands. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Adam. You didn't tell me that we couldn't have, there's no fluff allowed. I mean, I had no warning about that. So I'm feeling a little bit kind of on the spot.
I mean, either you're a strategist, you're a brander who reminisces in fluff, loves the fluff, or you're no fluff at all, I think. So we'll see what kind of...
Probably err towards the no fluff at all.
I like that. So yeah, you're the president of Model B. Do you mind telling us like a little bit about how big the agency, what type of clients you have, your core philosophy, why I know you started in Ogilvy and you've just kind of had like a really long career. I'd love to hear like what's special about Model B.
So now you're calling me old. Adam, this is going nowhere fast.
I think maybe experienced, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, Model B is definitely the byproduct of years of experience that leads to where we are today and having a more innovative models. Model B is purposely a marketing consultancy because the ability to deliver extraordinary services with all the departments in one house, it's really hard. In fact, I would argue, impossible on some level. And when I was in the big agencies where you'd have 60,000 employees and you'd go to the CRM department, the first question was, what's the job number? Not like, what are you working on? That's cool. Tell me more. People weren't leaning in. They were like, okay, this is more work. I'm being asked to do more work. When do you need it? What's the job number? And how's this going to affect my department? And so it was, not like, I mean, not always the case, right? I worked on the Jack Daniels brand and everybody would line up, down the hall to work on that. So it was an easier
And what year was that?
Oh, it would have been in the mid 90s.
Yeah.
I was at Arnold Worldwide there and we worked with Brown-Forman, and Jack Daniels was one of the portfolio clients, Woodford Reserve, Southern Comfort, Chambord, some wine brands. It was great. And working on spirits and alcohol in general is pretty easy because you don't have to convince people too hard to get out there and enjoy it.
No, and you probably have a lot of creative liberties with alcohol brands. They can...
What's interesting is Jack Daniels is very much a brand that you tend to stick close to home with. A lot of the marketing comes out of, as we would say, out of the holler, because it's made in, a rural part of Tennessee. And, that work ethic and that honesty and kind of appreciation for the craft of the way they make it is part of the story that they always lean on.
Don't break what isn't broken, it sounds like.
Exactly. And, it's also a place that most people don't really get a chance to visit. Helping them feel connected to it is another way to support the brand. But I mean, honestly, one of the campaigns that I was most proud of that we did for the brand was actually a poster series around the presidential election. Because one of the things we found out was that people would write Jack Daniels in for president, like over 100,000 people.
Bunch of alcoholics? No.
Exactly. Well, and so rather than like being negative about it, how do we go and bring the brand back to the right place? And so we did this poster series where basically the thought of every poster was, while we appreciate your vote, we hope you vote for us when you have a drink and not when you cast your ballot.
Interesting.
These were actually made as wild postings near the election places, and in fact, it was originally posted outside the Republican and Democratic national conventions. So, and it was great. It was fun. Yeah. So, but back to Model B, we're a marketing consultancy because the 12-person team has access to incredible talent and resources through what we call the Partner Collective, which is a group we've built from scratch and building relationships with over 60 agencies. Actually, as of today, 67 agencies around the world.
And are these agencies like coastal? Are they larger? Are they smaller? Tell me about these guys.
Yeah, it's a mix. Honestly, it's a mixture because today in the marketing world, you need everything from a great creative resource, great storytelling partners, great social content players, videography companies, the kind of classic stuff, the foundational stuff. But you also need like AI tools, right? So we have, one of the partners, a company called UserQ, has an AI-powered qualitative and quantitative research tool, and it's fantastic. I mean, so you can gain insights.
Quantitative tool for market research,
Yep.
consumer
Yep.
research.
Yep. So you can do message testing, you can do product development, feature testing, you can do whatever you would normally do in kind of
So
traditional.
it sources consumers for research and then takes their answers, analyzes it, gives you kind of like the backbone of what everybody's saying.
Yep. And it uses a chatbot-like technology, or a, agentic agent, if you will, so it feels like you're having a conversation with somebody, almost like an in-depth interview. But
Yeah.
because it's a learning model, every conversation it has with each sequential person, it gets better and it builds on the knowledge base.
Oh.
So one of the biggest problems with research is getting access to the, like I remember in the past, I've done research with surgeons, and
For the smoke comes out during
yep,
and it's
for ConMed. Yep.
ConMed.
Yep.
Great visuals on that campaign. Really kind of
Oh, thanks.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, the basic insight there, ConMed makes a smoke evacuation tool set for surgical theaters. So one of the things that happens a lot of times when they're doing surgery is they'll use, knives basically that are cautery devices. So they're burning flesh, sometimes to stop bleeding, sometimes to open a wound, sometimes to close things, variety of different uses. But every time that's applied, there's smoke. And if that smoke is in the theater and in your inner cavities, like, around your body, it's not good. Like you just say smoke and by default, there's no version of smoke that's good. Right.
Oh, I have 4 air purifiers in my house that I'm very passionate about.
Right. Right. And so you think about it. And so part of the campaign there was actually, how do we invite the ER nurses, OR nurses, and the surgeons to the table to be a part of the solution by removing smoke from the equation, and therefore better recovery times, no risk of any kind of, debilitating diseases for them. Because you think about it, surgeons are in the surgery suite, on the average, day of actually doing surgery, probably from like 7 a.m. until 5. It's a lot of smoke, And
I was kind of curious how to make them your advocates. I was thinking like they wear masks on the one hand, but on the other hand, they're there for so long. Yeah, I wonder, tell me about, did they kind of like easily become, the idea is that they would become advocates and then they would talk to their management to like install some of these
Yeah, I mean,
filters?
the device does exactly what the device that didn't have the smoke removal do. So part of it is like surgeons learn how to use tools and become comfortable with, just like all of us, right? We use, we have our favorite knife in the kitchen. We have our favorite, tool in the garage. We have our favorite, 7-iron in our golf clubs, right? Whatever we're comfortable with. And, change is hard, even if it's better. So, the challenge is how do we compel them to, the number one priority of every surgeon is, or should be, given their Hippocratic oath, is the best outcome for the patient, right? The best medical outcome for the patient. Well, if you're creating an environment with smoke in it that could be avoided and you're able to perform the surgical process in the same functional way, it's a 1 + 1 = 3. So it's a good situation in that case. But yeah, I mean, so we were able to do, actually in that case, we did qualitative research, but it was hard because we actually had to reach out to surgeons and schedule time.
Oh, and they're such prima donnas. I know.
Well, and they want to do it at 5 a.m. But with UserQ, you could actually do that any time of day or night. Like they could do it on their drive to the office.
I see.
Right?
Yeah, because
that's the beauty of it.
And this meeting is via chat. It's not via phone, right?
You can do both. Yeah, you can do both.
You can do both.
Yep. And In fact, you can even augment it with live stuff that you would do and use a listening device, right? So you can actually have human involvement. So there's lots of, anyway, the beauty of the partner collective is how do you bring precision to the equation on talent? And in the world today, there's always been enormous talent in the world, but there was always challenge in how you aggregate and resource it. And today, because we've all gotten used to, living through a box or being accessible remote and using lots of different solutions to do that, the Partner Collective has a cloud-based platform that you can initiate opportunities or projects through. You can tap people. You can actually search by what we call superpowers.
Right. I want to dig into that. The superpower. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea is that you get, it's a feature that I really love in the Partner Collective. You get 2 superpowers, right?
Up to
Up to 3, but it's an idea that like a lot of agencies love to say that they do everything. Everybody says they love to do brand strategy, SEO, web design, but at the end of the day, like, what are you really good at? And so I love that idea of limiting agencies because everybody likes to posture that they can do everything.
Yeah.
Because that's where money is.
And in some respect, we all kind of do offer everything, but we have to then resource it and find a way to do it. And so either agencies go to their departments and push them to do it. And sometimes it's not their strength and it's kind of something they do, like it's a micro department, or a lot of times they're going outside.
Outsource it.
Yeah. And a lot of times, I'm sure just me saying this will make a number of listeners cringe because they've all been, aware of these kinds of behaviors going on where, they're, an outside resource is asked to white label and to use their email and pretend they're part of the team. And that's just not, in the world today, that's not necessary.
White labeling people. Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, in the end, if you're using an outside resource and they're great, shouldn't you take the benefit of their brand forward and actually honor it? We do. That's our Partner Collective. So if you were to say, I want to do some research, I'd say, well, we've got 3 or 4 options in the collective. What's the objective that we're trying to solve for? And we can use UserQ, we can use Labrador, we can use, whichever partner feels the right. And by the way, if we don't have redundancy, we will, because, a lot of times the decision-making around this stuff and the way great work really happens is through relationships that really fit. And we've all been in a situation, especially if you've been around as long as I have, where the relationship just isn't a fit. Right? You don't get along. The vibe's not there. There's some reason you don't like jive with the team or the person. And if you're in a big agency and that team is inside your agency as a resource, what do you do? Right? Do you lose the whole thing? Or do you like fire those people and hire new people? There's lots of different things you can do, but with the Partner Collective, we can resource it, and we thankfully have never had a situation where somebody didn't like one of the resources, but that factor is a reality that I've encountered in my career a few times where, and I've been asked off business where we've kind of run our course of working together because I've pushed back or we've found reasons to not get along, which is sometimes the case when you're pushing hard to do great work. And that's, then somebody has to come in and fill that void. And the Partner Collective allows us to do that and to do it where those resources cost nothing to a client until they're deployed. So the two central themes of the Partner Collective are precision of access to talent and friction reduction. So, it's easily available, there's no problem. We actually, as the partner that works with the clients directly, we bring the brief to life for the partner so that they understand the kind of background of the brand, the strategies and kind of other programs that are going on, so that institutional knowledge delivery is there. Because, we've all been through it, right? You start working on a new brand and it takes a while to get up to speed on their vibe and their brand culture and their things
Certainly,
not to do.
Build trust with the client that like you may not know the right answer and we're going to gently guide you towards it.
Right. Yep.
And you recommended, last time we talked, you recommended a book called Open Talent by John Windsor. Did you read that before you created the Partner Collective or after? How has that book kind of shaped the way that you've built this collective?
That's a great question. I've known John for a long time because he's been an industry guy. And years and years ago, he created a crowdsourcing-based agency, as he called it then, called Victor and Spoils. And they were notable because they were one of the
great name.
Yeah, right. It was one of the first agencies that was a virtual agency in essence, where there was a small team of full-time employees and then lots of outside resources they pulled together to solve the needs of the client. But they won a significant a big account. And that put them on the map. Like all of a sudden, all the big holding companies that were kind of used to being the only choices in that, kind of race. So I was aware of the victors and spoils way back when, but the book, and then I built the partner collective, starting really effectively in January of 23, at Model B. But I read the book. It actually just came out like middle of 23, if I'm remembering correctly. It might even be or beginning of 24, but I definitely was happy to consume it because there's all kinds of really great tips and tricks there and kind of war wounds, right? From having gone through the process of building this kind of model and knowing how to talk about it. And, and just even the term open talent is a great mechanism for like in a positive way of framing how you have access to talent. It's an open door basically to, access the right talent at the right time, large, small, or otherwise.
It's certainly better than calling it Fiverr, that's for sure.
Right.
Do you think, moving on to like industry trends, do you think, I mean, I kind of already know the answer, but I'd love to hear, a lot of different agencies are connected to other agencies and use other agencies. Is this kind of going to continue into the future? Is it going to deepen? Is it going to get more shallow? I think, I remember I had Hank Smith, director of strategy at Smith Gifford, on my podcast, and he was saying that he is in these collective networks and they're constantly kind of checking in. They don't have a platform like you do. Platform's really cool. You search, you can see different companies, pictures. It's like an encyclopedia. But he was mentioning how the people in the collective, quote unquote, were checking in with each other, like, hey, do you have something that you need help with? Yeah. And it reminded me of when I was unemployed, going to a networking event and everybody was unemployed. And we were just kind of like bumbling around the room trying to be like, what are you up to? What are you up to? So yeah, sorry, is this going to kind of get deeper, more shallow, this collective model?
Well, I mean, any change is hard for people, right? So, and I'm a student of the industry and student of change. And, we spend a lot of our time as marketers thinking about what innovation and adaptation should be considered for our clients. And, the number of agencies that don't do that for themselves, I think is a big mistake and a big miss. So, I've actually built relationships with the leaders of like Nostos, which is a network of agencies, independent agencies that all get together and they work across the aisle, and it's a pay to be a member system, but a very good one. And they have purpose in the way they've built it, the purpose in the way they connect and communicate, and purpose in the way they go to market. I think that's the key. But, in our collective, we actually have other collectives inside of our collective. Why? Because we fundamentally believe in more is better. And if you want to use the goofy term co-opetition, I mean, there are times where we are actually, going after a similar business. I mean, our outbounding this year alone, there have been 3 prospects I've talked to that actually, and I had no visibility to this, that we're already working with other members of our collective. And as soon as I found that out, I reach out to them and say, hey, I know you're working with this company. We just had an interaction with them where they're showing some interest in possibly working with us. I want to make sure I'm not stepping on your turf, but I'd love for us to be in it together in a way, because fundamentally, one of the biggest opportunities in my mind is how do you put guardrails up from people that will try and take your business? And so,
yeah, tell me about that. Yeah.
Well, I think, we've all been a partner for a company in the past or currently where you do 2 or 3 things. Like, let's say you do media planning and buying, but you also happen to have a social group, right? And if the agency or if the client has a social agency, you're still going to try and get that business, right? You're still going to say, hey, we're over here if we can ever be helpful. Whereas if you have a partner there that you know and trust through a collective, they're not going to come after your business because they probably have media on some level, maybe not all media, but maybe they have SEO, or now they're offering GEO or AEO, whatever you call it. So there's always that threat. Whereas if you bring in partners and surround the client with talent that you trust, your stability and your ability to actually collaborate effectively. One of the biggest, I mean, having been on the client side, one of the biggest challenges for clients is refereeing between the agencies. And if the agencies actually do that for them, for the client, it's a win-win, right? But that's where in our collective, we all agree that we're gonna, take a neutral stance towards each other, but always try and, work to the benefit of the client, in the most positive way. But that's a change. That's a mindset that people have to kind of learn and be comfortable with and take the time to think about, because so many people are so busy doing what they've always done. They don't, this is different. It feels different. It requires different time and effort be applied to what you do. And that alone is, I think, the biggest hurdle to this kind of evolution is change is hard for people.
Yeah, certainly in every industry. We do
Yep.
something for so long, we're locked into it. We think it's the right move moving forward. Tell me about, well, first of all, Model B, what type of clients do you kind of go for? We've heard about this health tech, if you want to call it, company. Do you stay in tech? Do you do CPG? What's the bread to your butter to your bread?
Yeah, no, good question. Our strongest verticals are tech with a particular strength in cybersecurity, healthcare, which is a massive, messy, as we actually have some trade associations inside of healthcare. We've worked with
What does that mean? Trade associations inside
So
health?
like the Association for Accessible Medicines is one of our clients, and
Oh, okay.
they're a trade association or a nonprofit focused on supporting and advocating for the biosimilars and generic pharmaceuticals marketplace. And the members are makers and distributors of drugs. When a typical process is a drug becomes available under patent, and when the patent expires, then multiple biosimilars or generic options become available because economics are really advantageous. And the reason in the medical space, the financial models are just a giant problem, and part of the reason that the US pays so much for so many things, but I won't go down that rabbit hole.
No, we can go down that. I love that road, but yeah, there's this, he was an NYU marketing professor, Scott Galloway, I think it is.
Yeah, Prof G.
Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
he released it. I think he posted on Instagram this map of the top company, like how many people are hired by specific industry or health. Have you seen that map? And it's just like it
Yeah.
used to be like services, products, what have you, and then now it's just every state is just healthcare, and then we're having this great like health awakening in the world, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's an awakening right now as much as it is a science denial period, but I think within that is the awakening that some are feeling.
People are
Certainly.
asking questions at least.
Right. Right.
Maybe it's in the wrong lane and we have all these red pill podcasters, but
Right.
So yeah, we have tech, we have healthcare.
Yep.
What else?
Trade associations is another one. And then what's the last one? My brain is cramping. So tech, healthcare. Oh, finance. Yeah.
Finance. Gotcha. Would you ever work with like a CPG client?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
fun.
Well, yes and no. I mean, it depends on which company. I mean, I've worked on Unilever in the past, and I'll pick on them just because, it's very formulaic, right? It's very formulaic, and they research everything, and it's the opportunity to do breakthrough work is very like exponentially hard. Now,
the like levels because it's such a big company, or
their process, their process is all about well-researched and de-risking everything they do, right? And the reality is the best marketing takes risks. By definition, it establishes a new way of having a conversation, and and so it's formulaic, right? And it's also, I mean, it's a great training ground to understand, the full context of brand management, but it also is where a lot of great ideas go to die because the brands, they'll do, concept testing alone, which to me is just, I refuse to believe that concept testing does anything other than finds the mean. Show me a research methodology that can define love on terms we all agree on, and then we'll use that for concept testing. It doesn't exist, never will exist. It's not going to happen. So what I would instead prefer is let's do strategy testing Let's verify strategy and communication messaging points. And that you can definitely find out in research, and you should. But then you have to put ideas out there in the wild and let them breathe, but really be in touch with consumers and their mindset. You can't research. You can't ask people, what do you love about this? Or how does this make you feel? I mean, they'll tell you, but they're going to say, I don't like orange. And how is that useful? I mean, that's not what you're selling, is the color, right? You're selling the brand.
As far as these industries, what is your like client? Well, first of all, how many clients are on retainer right now? How many clients do you have right now?
Probably 12 to 14 clients total, something
12,
like that.
14. And you mentioned that your agency has about 20,
12 employees. Yep.
12. What does your like client acquisition look like? Your process?
It's multi-directional, as I think it should be. I mean, it was what we do for clients too, right? So, whatever is right for the client, we think about. But the priority is putting customers first and understanding who your ICP is. So we have a size requirement, like they have to, spend, collectively for sales, SG&A on their budget has to be at least $5 million or more.
Yeah.
Because otherwise there's no there, right?
Well, also the secret of the branding and marketing world is that we adjust prices based on our client's size.
Well, yes. I mean, it's exactly. And the time and effort it takes to do a small company versus a large is the same largely. So the budgets afford you the ability to have margin. And
a smaller company might be more chained to you and what you want to do.
Well, and I think that's why every agency has a mix, right? You tend to have those bigger clients that are really rewarding financially, but may not be otherwise, and then you often have the fun accounts that are, not the high compensation, but give you the work that you can really, leverage into future conversations. So, but growth marketing and being focused on growth is essential for any organization, and we very thoughtfully do it. We do it through organic growth. We map and model all of our contacts and stay in touch with them in a very thoughtful way, because that's that referral network and that rehire. We've had some clients that have worked with us across 3 to 4 jobs. And, when a emerging marketer grows up and gets higher job, their next job, a lot of times you have to move to get that next bigger job because the person in front of you is not moving for years, right? So we've had, I know one particular person that we've worked with like at least 4 times. And there's one CMO that we've worked with twice in the last 6 years, which predates me in the company, by the way, but the team's worked with her in 2 cybersecurity companies, and both of them have sold, and she's now at her 3rd company, and we're hopefully going to be working with her soon again.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, agencies, the lifeblood is referrals and kind of holding on to clients. I love that mental picture of Model B producing like guardrails against other. Do you have any other like marketing strategies? I know you guys are heavily in the AI game. Are you using like AI to do any like outreach at all? Walk me through that.
We don't really use it so much we automate some of the processes in our outbounding, but we're very careful to make sure it doesn't feel like every other AI dog that's out sniffing around. It's like, it surfs your site and whatever content they can find and puts a positive affirmation in the opening line, and that offer of goodness. I mean, that we don't like use stuff like that. One of our key things is, because we fundamentally believe in thoughtful marketing and insights and strategic thinking, that a lot of times informs things that are marketing adjacent even. And because we're a consultancy, we often are advising clients on how to have their talent team hire. What's the story and the way you approach new employees? Because if you don't do that right, they join on the wrong premise and then are unsatisfied, right? They don't feel connected right away. And you want people to come in going, I bought into this brand because of what you told me, and I'm now experiencing it and I love it. It all fits. So we do things like that. But the AI enablement stuff that we do is to help us get really solid information around companies. One of the things we often do for clients is what we call an ecosystem map. that visualizes all the kind of forces for good and evil internally by department and functional area and externally. Like, what do their partner programs look like? If they're making things, if they make something, like, what's their process for getting raw materials? What's their distribution model look like? Like today, what are tariffs? Like, one of the companies we work with is an apparel manufacturer, and tariffs are just have them up at night. I mean, it's just tragic how it's affecting their business.
And
And
tell me how that kind of relates. Like, if we understand who they're working with, what their fears are. Well, I mean, fears is always important for sales, but like, if we understand these like very nuanced detail, tell me how that fits into like the sales picture of pitching.
well, how can you have a conversation? Agencies, to keep it simple, agencies get asked by marketing leaders and staff members to do ads and stuff. Most of the time, the client hasn't had the time to really think about all of the details around what they're asking and if it's even the right approach.
Oh, I
So
see.
by understanding how they make money and what, how that would affect their customers, and really understanding their customers and what friction points and the way. I'll give you an example. In the cybersecurity, we had a cybersecurity client that he only wanted to talk to the chief information security officer, the CISO. Great. Like, we obviously have to get them because they're the final decision maker on whether they buy your product or not, or their service. But the buying committee is up to 30 people wide in a
It's
big
a
organization.
nightmare.
Yeah. I mean,
It's a
big
goddamn
organization. It
nightmare.
includes board members,
Yeah.
CTO, CFO, procurement.
Must have been such a long sales process.
Well, and there you have it. So by looking at the ecosystem map, one of the things we found out was that for an enterprise level installation of this particular company's solution, which was encryption key management and protection, it was an 18-month cycle from first awareness to contract signed and beginning the process of installing it. Well, guess how long the average CTO or CISO is in their role?
Oh,
Between 18 to 24 months.
yeah.
So
Wow.
guess what? You sell. So you've got a yes almost. You've got a verbal yes. You got a letter of understanding. You've got you're in a proof of concept, and then they leave. Crap.
Sounds like we need guardrails against CTOs.
Well, so what we found was who's advising the CTOs and the CISOs, which are different, chief information security officers, who's advising them on their career paths. And it's academics that have worked in the industry are now, consulting while they're teaching at MIT or, UVA or wherever, university. And consultants that have consultancies that help narrow the field quickly and suggest and recommend platforms that are appropriate because they spend all their time. Think of it as like a system integrator, but for cybersecurity. And so we pivoted and started focusing on those folks, and the sales volume qualified, MQL quality improved, SQL progression improved, SQL value, and the time from first touch to sale went from 18 months down. And more importantly, we were actually able to track CISOs when they moved because they knew about us, and their advocacy group traveled with them. Those outside contractors that were advocates that were part of the buying committee, stay with them, follow them. They're going to go to a bigger, better place, chances are, unless they get fired, which sometimes happens. But so that
by the way, this is a level of sophistication that I've never heard of for an agency, and I love it. I think like the trend that we are seeing is AI, but through AI is like information gathering so that we can be more precise.
That's exactly right. Yep, exactly right. And if we can't help on that level, then we're just doing ads. And with 100,000 ad agencies or marketing services firms in the U.S., like you can't just be making sausage. That's a race to the bottom. So
I'm assuming you've been to San Francisco before.
Oh yeah, lived there.
You live there. So I've only been once, and I'm from New York City, but I remember I went to San Francisco in like 2014, 16. And I remember feeling like everybody was starting an app, every shop different, every storefront was like beautiful and colorful and different. But I got in the Uber, and he was telling me about his dog walking app. I got a burrito in the Mission, and they were telling me about like a food rating app. And what I'm seeing with agencies is like everybody is smart, creative, unique, different. But that's the thing. Everybody is smart, unique, creative, different.
Yep.
And like we all try to look different from each other, but we're all the same. And so it's been really interesting to hear the nuances, having people on this podcast, the nuances of what actually makes them different, at least agency versus agency. With AI, it sounds like you guys have a lot of proprietary tools. You have the Blueprint AI tool. I'd love to hear how you guys are using AI and maybe hear about like industry, like how you think AI is trending either in or out, whatever your views on that topic is for agencies.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say it kind of breaks down to about a third, a third, a third. A third of the agencies out there are really using it in wise ways and intelligent ways and offering value to themselves and their clients. And they're sharing in that value, right? They're not just harvesting it for themselves because, clients know that you're using them. And if it's saving you time, then that time should come back in some way to them. You should be pricing based on value, but again, we all know that that's a conversation that, basically the way that you price is what can you afford, and then we'll do the best we can for that. I mean, that's really the net of it.
And the value should be like, if you create 3 times revenue, your product should cost 1.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and I think obviously with different business models, it's harder for some brands to do a value-based incentive program or compensation program. But I do think that the agencies that are going to be most successful going forward, and frankly, the clients that are going to benefit from the kind of thinking and caliber of impact that agencies can deliver and should be delivering. If you're not vested in the collective success, then you're just making widgets. You're just, you're an Upwork soldier for a hourly wage. And that's not nobody gets the best value from that, in my opinion. That commoditizes it. But so back to your question, a third are using stuff wisely, a third are abusing tools and arguably creating miserable stuff. And, it's the clip art era, right? With social content, looks the same,
Oh,
smells the
slop.
same. Yeah, exactly. And it's terrible. And but the good news is that anybody with half a brain sees it, smells it, knows where it's coming from, and doesn't put up with it for very long. So I think there's going to be a reckoning for those in the middle there. And then a third are not using it at all and don't have a clue and are so busy doing what they've always done that they have no sense, and they're going to be affected in a negative way because you have to continue to evolve or you die. I mean, that's just a reality. It's part of there's a reason that evolution is a term. And if you don't evolve, you basically get, sorted out and left behind. And that,
Well, Model B sells and sets up a lot of these AI tools for other agencies, right?
not for the agencies as much as we have in our collective partners that certainly can do that for other agencies. Our goal is to be the strategic thought leader and architect of plans and programs and solutions, and then to have resources in the collective that effectively are the answer to doing those things. Because the intellectual property is a key thing. Strategy, thoughtfulness, and integration is hard to replicate. Solutions are commodities on some level. Or they're replicable with greater ease. And there are many organizations that are doing the same thing when it comes to solutions. Obviously, there's a spectrum, right? There's everything from the Salesforce enablement, kind of platforms down to the DIY, Zoho, prosumer-like versions, right? Same thing's true in the AI application world and the way that agencies do that. We don't want to be in that space, just like we also don't want to have a video editing company, because the day you turn the lights on and have all this hardware and people to run it, it's outdated. You die from the cost of versioning, but unless you have a ton of business, and so in our collective we have resources that have that, and that's their superpower. And it's beautiful because we're only using them for what they're best at, and they benefit because we're saying, hey, Adam, you're great at these, we need a widget, or we need an X, Y, and Z, and that's your superpower. Can you do that? Sure. Who wouldn't be happy to take the call about something that they're good at?
Yeah, for sure. It sounds like Model B has a tremendous amount of clients. You have really sophisticated technology, beautiful website with kind of like a fun, it's like 95 it's like 90% business and then like 10% like kind of quirkiness. And I love that. So it's like this nice, in the MBA, we learned about just like, right. It's a weird type of correct persona that you want to have with business. It's like competence and warmth. I
Right.
think it does have a good balance of that. Is there anything that like, that Model B is having anything that's like been like frustrating, anything that you're working on, anything that you're kind of like moving towards?
I mean, right now, the uncertainty coming out of DC has a lot of people either pausing or being more cautious about what they invest in marketing. And, the
Like
smart
tariffs?
tariffs and, the things, like, will they have the employees, if they have any international folks working for them? There's
Oh,
lots
yeah,
of
sorry.
different
Yeah.
layers of impact there. So there's just, the uncertainty of it, the fact that it is literally every day the news cycle has another kind of, oh my God, really? Like, I think that has a lot of business leaders. And so a lot of companies, I mean, we see this in the headlines, right? The number of layoffs, Microsoft, 10,000 people just gone, and tech in particular is being hit very hard. SaaS as a category is facing declines, right? Even though it's, what's the
Declines that were relative to their massive upswing.
yeah,
And I
but
felt that in my own life during COVID. And yeah.
right. But the interesting thing is SaaS came on as a business model solution that was innovative and, kind of changed the game. People adopted it very quickly because it was like $6 a month. Who can't afford that? Or even if it's $1,000 a month, it's cheaper than building it. Right. Now that they're moving away from that, what's the alternative? And so one of the things we're watching very closely is what is that next cycle in the kind of, services and kind of product delivery that will happen. And there's lots of different acronyms out there that are floating around, but nothing's really hopped on the hot cycle yet. But those things are affecting our business. It's affecting the clients, the Association for Accessible Medicines. We also have a client that works in the managed care pharmacy space. And so, with all the uncertainty around what's going on and the FDA being affected in terms of layoffs and, the regulatory kind of changes around, the way the industry works. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of people scratching their head going like, what does tomorrow look like? How do you, because before, for good or bad, the marketplace was slower moving. And so you could build a plan that you could work against for at least 6 to 9 months, if not longer, with greater effectiveness and clarity. And so I think that's probably the biggest thing that we're seeing. And, so with softness in spending, it means that we can't make the impact that we'd like in some cases, or, like just this morning, I was on with a client prospect out of Singapore at 7 a.m. my time. And, they're talking about the impact of tariffs and how the plan was to do something starting in November, and they might actually now want to do it in February because they don't know how this is really going to level off.
Yeah.
And we talk to them weekly, and every week the conversation continues that they don't know, they're not sure. And before, this is a company that's, $2 billion company. They were sure. I mean, the market dynamics weren't as uncertain.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult to forecast revenue. Is there anything like do we have any like goals for Model B? Like anything kind of we're working on, bringing in new people, having like an issue we're struggling with, just kind of like a very real look at the future?
I mean, I think, our goal is to continue to build the partner collective to continue to resource it and to have more of the partners see the power and potential of it so that there's more engagement. Again, it's hard for people to make change, and we're seeing it, but it's slow. I'd love if there were more, kind of energy and activity there. But, look, it's, people have to want to do it. You can't force them. You can't, cajole them. You can only show them the power and possibility. So that's probably one of the things I would, if I had a magic wand, I'd like have everybody, if you spent 5 to 7% of your business development time in collaboration through the collective, you'd see that come back, I think 3x or more, but it takes time in doing it to see that. One of the things I think, you work in business development, one of the things that people are resistant to is trying new things when the things they're doing are working, even if it's not working as well as they'd like. So It's a hard thing to get people to adopt change.
Yeah, I do think also that agencies are really hungry. I've spoken with a lot of hungry agencies, and maybe they've had difficulties with other collectives, like kind of what I was discussing before is like, what are you doing? Well, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I wonder if a better framing would kind of help the adoption. Or I don't know. I need to talk more about that. But yeah, before we wrap up, I'd love to kind of, beginning to ask everybody like what is a campaign that they really love, like what really inspired them, or they can talk about a favorite campaign that they've done, something that really gets them excited.
Well, I've had the benefit of working on some really great stuff across my career, whether it be Jeep or Jack Daniels
What
or
type of what I'd love to hear about what Jeep.
well, we worked on the brand, so
Yeah.
and I'm old, so this goes back a number of years. Would have been in the 90s, and there's a great campaign that was actually done out of Detroit. Very notable campaign. There was a couple of ads. One was called Snow, where the Jeep was literally driving under snow so deep that all you saw was the brake lights when it
Hmm.
stopped at the stop sign.
We're talking like Wrangler, Liberty.
Well, I think it was actually I'm not even sure which model it was because you couldn't see it. I mean, the point was more that it was a Jeep and only Jeep could do that.
Yeah. That's
You
cool.
know,
I love that.
yeah. Another one that we did that the team did back then was I think it was called Estate, and basically think of a gated community with these big mansion-like homes, and everybody's got their fancy automated gates that open, and that one, they've got nice cars and stuff, and this one property, instead of that, it had a rock climb over their wall,
Oh,
and
that's so
the
Colorado.
Jeep Grand Cherokee fully loaded limited version goes, crawling over the wall and back into there. But it's just, you know,
I
uh,
think I've seen that one. It
yeah.
sounds very familiar.
Well, and one of the campaigns, I worked on the international business, so I was managing the Middle East, South Africa, and Latin America. And one of the things we did in South America in particular, because Jeep I assume it still is on some level, was a generic term for 4-wheel drives or SUVs,
Oh yeah,
and so we actually did a campaign that literally said Jeep, there's only one. And
that's
talked
good.
about, this is the real Jeep. Those others are just,
Yeah,
a name. And
so good.
that was
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Chris. I really appreciate it. And, it's really interesting to hear how you're kind of implementing AI. It's interesting that you have this collective, and I hope to see some new kind of cool healthcare campaigns coming through.
Thanks, Adam. Really enjoyed the conversation.